Good morning, I'm Adam Sexton. We have a top-tier Senate race in 2026 in New Hampshire, and there are interesting primaries on both sides of the aisle. Today, we're going to focus on the Democrats. The front-runner by a wide margin right now is Congressman Chris Pappas, who is our guest this morning in studio. Representative, thanks for coming in.
Good to see you, Adam.
So you're running for Senate right now, but obviously you are working and operating in Washington. So a lot of Democrats want to know, what's being done right now to exercise some oversight over immigration and customs enforcement and the things that they're doing, particularly in Minnesota?
Well, thanks, Adam. And look, this has been an incredible moving target here because this administration is blowing through legal boundaries, is running roughshod over the Constitution. What we saw transpire in Minneapolis that continues to this day is unacceptable in terms of the use of force, the way that the president and Kristi Noem are using ICE as a way to divide this country, to inflame tensions. Remember, after the shooting of the individual in the car, she was killed by an ICE agent, shot 3 times by an individual not following protocols. According to the videos that we've seen, there needs to be a full investigation. But Secretary Noem, the vice president, the president decided to create a narrative and to throw fuel on the fire and inflame tensions even further. This is not making our communities safer. You heard that directly from the law enforcement officials in Minneapolis. And I worry about what this means for the kind of high standards and professionalism that we have in law enforcement here in the state of New Hampshire and across the country. They've worked incredibly hard to raise standards, to build community relations. What we see ICE doing is disrupting all of that. So there needs to be some accountability here for an agency that appears to have no real oversight from the Republican majorities in the House and Senate. I think there are opportunities in the coming weeks as we talk about government funding to talk about raising standards, to have better training, to make sure that ICE officers are identified. These are basic common sense things that law enforcement do right here in the state of New Hampshire. There's no reason that ICE shouldn't be doing those same best practices.
A lot of Democrats are saying accountability means abolishing ICE. Are you on board with getting rid of the agency altogether?
Well, I'll be introducing legislation soon that looks to go after the additional appropriation that ICE received in the reconciliation bill this past summer. They received $75 billion above their annual budget with no strings attached and no real oversight from Republicans in Congress. So I want to use those dollars, and instead of pushing the envelope as ICE continues to do in our communities and dividing Americans, let's invest that in local law enforcement, expand support for things like the COPS grants that provide direct support for law enforcement agencies here in New Hampshire, including a lot of our small departments. So I think we got to be smart about how we focus on keeping this country safe. ICE has an opportunity to focus on its core mission, which most Americans support, which is going after the worst of the worst, as this president has often said, focusing on the criminals that are violating the law and have no reason to be here in the United States. That's the precedent from past administrations, including the Obama administration, that deported a record number of individuals, a lot of criminals who had no business being here in the United States. That's the core function of ICE. They need to refocus on that core function, and Congress has to step up to the plate and provide some oversight.
So you're saying reform rather than abolish?
ICE needs to focus on its core mission, which is keeping this country safe and going after criminals that are violating the law, not going after ethnic and racial minorities in the United States, going after individuals who are following the law, including going after American citizens that have every right to be here. The fact that they are going house by house, street by street, asking people for their papers, this isn't the United States of America that we all know.
Should they be allowed to carry out their law enforcement functions wearing masks all the time?
I don't see a role for that. I think officers should be identified. I don't believe that they should be wearing masks. I think we should follow the best protocols of law enforcement here in New Hampshire and across the country that represent sort of the gold standard of law enforcement. This sort of unaccountable police force that's out on the streets is really breaching the trust with law enforcement, with the federal government. I believe it's an overreach, and I think we need to see some reform and focus on training and best practices.
And are your fellow Democrats who are calling for out-and-out abolition, is that realistic?
Well, look at what we're facing right now. We got Republican control of the House and Senate and the White House. The president thinks he doesn't have to answer to anyone, including the courts. So this is an incredibly challenging situation to figure out where we can weigh in and perhaps realize some guardrails and get this administration to change course. I think you do that through government funding legislation. You do that by trying to bridge the divide in Washington and find Republicans that you can work with. So far, they've been few and far between. Do you regret voting for the Laken Riley Act? Well, that bill came about as a result of the murder of a young woman in Georgia at the hands of an individual who did not have the right paperwork, was not here in the United States legally, had committed other crimes, was arrested, and was let go by law enforcement. And so that bill looks to say that individuals that are committing crimes, they shouldn't be released by law enforcement. We need to be looking into the background of these individuals and make sure that we're keeping our country safe. The fact is, this administration is not following the law. I don't care which one you're talking about. They're creating their own rules. That's why this is an incredibly dangerous situation. And we need the courts and we need Congress to step up to the plate. So if you had it to do over again, you'd still vote yes? I think we've got to focus on smart immigration policy that keeps our country and our communities safe. I've challenged administrations of both parties, not just this one, where I see an overreach, but the last administration, where they let the border get out of control, and we saw a crisis develop in the first few years of the Biden administration. So I'm willing to stand up for what's right and make sure we're focused on smart immigration policy. What I hear from a lot of folks around New Hampshire, including a lot of Republicans, is that this administration is going too far, that this isn't what they voted for. So we need a reality check for this administration, and I think we can do that by talking about sensible policies that will keep our country safe and the kind of immigration reform that has languished on the table for far too long, that should be able to generate the kind of bipartisan support required to pass it and provide the support for our economy and our communities for the future. There is a report that the administration has a draft plan to put an immigrant detention center in your district in Merrimack. What have you been able to learn about whether or not that's accurate? Very little. What we know about it largely comes from the Washington Post reporting on this issue, and it appears that New Hampshire leaders, from the governor to local officials in Merrimack, have been left in the dark. That is inexcusable. I mean, here in New Hampshire, and I think most states across the country, we prize local control. We believe in limited government, in due process. We're not getting any of that out of the Trump administration right now. So we've asked those questions of the Department of Homeland Security, have received no answers. I think the show of support, or I guess opposition in the town of Merrimack at a local hearing that they held, is a pretty good indicator of how people in New Hampshire feel about this. It doesn't appear that the people of our state want these big detention centers built out. There are so many questions that we need answers to, including who are you contracting with on this? Where is this going to be located? How many people are you going to be looking to hire? And how's that going to impact our ability to have law enforcement and corrections people in place for what we need here in the state of New Hampshire? They're not answering any of those questions. So I believe we don't want this facility in New Hampshire. We're going to continue to work with town officials to make sure that they're getting whatever answers we can possibly get out of Homeland Security. Are you reaching a point of opposition, I guess, to the Trump administration that you think it's worth shutting down the government again at the end of this month? Well, we are making progress with respect to funding the government. I believe through the House we've passed 9 of the appropriations bills out of 12. So we've made significant progress, which is what I was calling for back this fall when the government shut down and there was an impasse. I said we need to get everyone in the room, get people negotiating and hash things out, and that we could actually produce a product that most people could get behind. That's what's been happening over the last few weeks in the House. So we've whittled that down to just a few government funding areas, and we'll see over the next couple weeks how that comes out. Right now, we're also focused on what we can do on health care. And through all this debate here and where this administration is focused, they're focused on anything but the day-to-day experiences of Granite Staters, the high cost of living. They're not working with us on health care. The president went on TV this week and talked about concepts of a plan that we've waited 11 years to hear about. And it's nothing more than stringing together a few bills that are already out there that are under consideration by Congress. So we need some serious leadership right now. And I think we can do that while we fund government responsibly, meet the needs of the American people, hopefully make some progress on health care in the coming weeks. On Venezuela, do you believe it's a positive development that Maduro is no longer in charge? Well, look, Maduro was a repressive dictator. And I hope that there's an opportunity for a path to democracy for the people of Venezuela. That's what they deserve. but it doesn't appear that's what the Trump administration's intent is here at all. They tipped off the oil companies, but they didn't even include members of Congress, including those on the relevant committees, in terms of notifying them about this military operation. You have to give great credit to the United States military. They performed with great skill and professionalism in that operation. I'm glad that no one was killed. There were a few injured. We've got to focus on what we can do to stop this administration from giving a blank check to the commitment in Venezuela. We just can't commit troops without a plan in place, without timelines in place. They haven't given us very basic timelines on what this means. The president has said on multiple occasions he's running Venezuela. We don't even know what that means. And he wants to rebuild the oil infrastructure in Venezuela at the cost of the American taxpayers, to the benefit of the big oil companies. This makes no sense. People want to focus on lowering costs, on building more housing, on lowering energy prices. I've got legislation that I introduced to try to bring down energy bills for New Hampshire families. That's what we should be working on, not forever wars and endless commitments to nation building in countries in our hemisphere and around the world.
All right, Congressman Chris Pappas, we've unfortunately just hit our time for the day. We'll get to more topics the next time you're here. We appreciate you coming in, and we'll see you out there on the campaign trail.
Thanks, Adam.
All right, and we'll be right back with another candidate in this Democratic primary for U.S. Senate, Karishma Manzoor. Stay with us.